Alright, so we are in Stationeers today, and I'm making this video as a kind of a tutorial and tips and tricks video with a little bit of let's play and kind of review elements in there, primarily because this is a very deep, complex simulation game, but it has a brutal learning curve. And I'm hoping to make an up-to-date video of all the latest updates that has been done on the game to sort of get new players into the game, or people that may have bought the game but you kind of bounced off of it because of just, as I said, how steep the learning curve is. And I think for players that have a lot of experience, I don't know how much you'd be able to take from this video, but who knows? There's lots of different ways to solve problems in Stationeers, which is part of what makes the game so much fun. So first thing we need to look at is when you get into a new game, you have a couple of different options in terms of where you're going to play. Now, it kind of makes a distinction between the Moon and Mars in terms of how difficult it is. In reality, it's on about the same level. That's my take on it. They are slightly different in terms of Mars having a little bit of an atmosphere and some dust storms, which can cause you to lose items if you leave them outside instead of, being kind of bolted down somewhere or in your base. But those only come into play a little bit later on, and really it's not that much of a deal. It really just depends on what you want to do, like which of these two you enjoy more. I personally have a preference for Mars. The only other major difference that sort of tangibly is going to come into play is the fact that you have to use slightly different radiators when you're getting rid of heat. But really, they're both very beginner friendly, or at least as beginner friendly as anything can be in Stationeers. Now the next thing, so we are going to choose Mars, but most of what I'm going to cover here will apply for the Moon as well. Now, if we look at the different difficulty options in the game, this one is a little bit strange because I kind of think that the difference between easy and normal in terms of difficulty is negligible. It's probably like 5% more difficult on normal, but it's about twice as grindy. And I'll just briefly explain what I mean by that. So if we go to easy, for example, you'll see that things like your metabolism rate is it's a little bit slower, so you don't have to eat as often. You can also see that your mining yield is higher. Now the reality is, if something's going to kill you in Stationeers, it's not most of the time, it's not going to be because you didn't mine enough resources or because you didn't eat enough food. It's either going to be because you're not able to produce food at all, or really what's going to happen is it's because you've blown up like a section of your base or something like that. I've done two kind of playthroughs, one on normal, one on easy. I did not find normal to be more difficult than easy, but I did definitely find it to be slower paced and more grindy. And for that reason, I would definitely recommend that you start on easy, just because you'll get more done. You'll learn more things faster if you're doing that. But even if you're an experienced player, if you want to make the game more difficult for yourself, I'd advise that you do that either by selecting a more difficult world to play on, something like Europa, or what's the other one? Venus, I believe it is. Those are definitely going to introduce a lot of challenge, or just give yourself goals, because this is not a survival game in the way that something like The Long Dark is a survival game. You can reload saves, you can respawn, stuff like that. So this is really more an engineering and sort of problem-solving game, I think. And that's why, I would just stick to easy. That tends to be the most fun, but kind of each to their own, right? And then finally, start conditions. Standard versus brutal. This one's going to be a no-brainer. If you're starting out, you should definitely start on standard. That's just going to make things a lot simpler for you. I would say, again, if you go for brutal, in some respects, it may make things a little bit more grindy, but, it's also going to make for an interesting challenge. I can totally see why people would want to start on brutal, but for the purposes of this tutorial, and let's just name this properly so that I can find this later on, we are going to play on standard. So yeah, we're going to be on Mars, easy, standard. Feel free to play on the moon for your own game if you want to, and we are kind of dropping into the planet here. Now, let's just kind of look at this intro sequence. I quite like this. One of the things that I'm going to show you immediately as we get out from here which I did not notice on my first playthrough, is that there is a water bottle bag and some cereal bars in here. If you combine these with everything else that you have in the supplies, you're going to have more than enough. I'm also going to hit L to switch off my flashlight because I don't need it right now. There's plenty of sunlight and that does drain your battery quite a bit faster. And then two things I quickly want to point out, F1 and F2. So F1's going to show you the Stationeers guide. Super useful, not complete, but anything that you can't find in here, you are going to be able to find in the wikis. And then F2, if you hold down Alt, you'll see I can use my cursor here. This gives you really cool sort of helper hints to get started. And this is one of the best updates that they made in the game. That's what allowed me to kind of get into it. Now, I'm just going to pick a spot here to start the base. I want to kind of get rid of this. I think actually if I use... So I always tend to open up my suit inventory and the tool belt. And I think we can use an angle grinder to deconstruct this. We could always use this later, but I don't think it really matters. I'm just going to throw it over there because I may want to build my base here. Not sure what the best spot is, but this I think is as good a spot as any. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the, I think I can use the angle grinder to just deconstruct the lander as well, which will kind of drop everything that's inside of it. And we're going to want to start with construction supplies, which is here. So let's just grab this. Okay, let me switch on the jetpack, that is J. And we're just going to move this over here. I'm not going to focus too much on stuff that they're going to teach you in the in-game tutorials, because that is there, but I will say that the in-game tutorials are woefully inadequate for what you need to know to be successful in Stationeers. So we're going to go ahead and open this up now. Okay, now I'm going to switch the flashlight back on because it's just going to make it a little bit easier to see these things. And we're going to start with some iron frames. And I need to see how these are laid out and what's going to be a good place to start the base. And I want to start it there because I want those resources. So I'm kind of going to start the layout over here. This looks like as good a place as any, I would say. Let's maybe do it here so that it's easy for me to walk onto this initial bit, which is kind of going to be, for lack of a better word, almost like just like a porch or the outside area of the base. So we're going to do this 3x3, then this is going to be our airlock, and then I'm going to make a 5x4 kind of section here. So let's just build it out 4 spots. Let's just see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you want to know why I'm making it 5x4, there's no real specific reason for this other than I find it to be a good size. It's a good balance between fitting everything that I want in my base, at least initially, and having enough materials to build it, and also not making it too intensive in terms of getting it sort of just filled up with oxygen and the right temperature and managing all of those things initially. You are definitely going to want to expand this later in the game, but for now, this should be absolutely efficient or enough for you to do what you need to do. So, okay, I still have 3 left here. I'm just going to kind of push them in here-ish because I can use this as well. And then the next thing you want to do is, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start getting rid of, actually it's not this one that I usually keep open, it's the backpack. And anything that I'm not using, like the duct tape, I don't need that right now. I'm just going to put that back in here. It is useful if you're damaged your suit, so I guess if you're playing cautiously, you probably want to have that kind of on hand. But I'm not too bothered about that right now. Now, basically there are 2 levels of welding these up. If I do level 1 like this, it's not going to be airtight, but it will allow us to walk over it like this, which for the outside panels is really all we need. And the only reason, there's no reason to not put 2 panels in here, other than it just wastes materials that I don't want to waste right now. So this is going to be outside, this is going to be outside, so I'm going to just do 1 in there, and then this is going to be our airlock. So I'm going to weld 2 panels in here, and then the same for all of these internal panels. So let's just weld all of these up. Now, while I'm busy doing that, I'll quickly explain that all of the tools that you have, if you look at the tool belt in the bottom left of the screen there, some of them don't require any resources or materials. Some of them, like this welder that I'm using here, uses fuel, which there should be a fuel container here somewhere. I think it's over there by the lander. So you can just refill this, and eventually you can make your own fuel as well. It's not particularly hard, but it's not a priority, I would say, early in the game, just because you do have it. And then, you know, depending on the other tools, like the drill, for example, uses a battery. Same thing for the angle grinder. And I know some people find it tedious that you have all of these different tools, but you do get used to it the more you play the game. You'll see I also tend to do things in a way that it's just more efficient. Instead of doing each of these kind of independently, I tend to use the same tool at the same time. Okay, we've just run out of panels there, so just need to go grab some more. But it's also, it leads to just more interesting situations where to keep yourself supplied and all of that, you need to kind of pay attention to, you know, do you have charged batteries? Do you have, you know, the right fuel or whatever, depending on the tool that you're using? So I do kind of like that element of immersion in the game, even though I know it can be a little bit divisive for some players. So this is kind of the outline. Everything that I have kind of welded in here now is going to be the inside of the base, and everything that isn't completely welded up is going to be outdoors. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to drag all of these things that are currently just kind of lying around outside. Where's the sun right now? I'm just going to drag it into the center of the base over there. And the reason why I'm doing that is because once we've closed everything up eventually, when I played this for the first time, I did this after I had my airlock and everything set up. And that basically means that you have to bring in each of these one by one, cycling through the airlock, and it's difficult with these big bulky items. It's not impossible, it's just gonna make life harder than it should be. So just kind of pile them up here in the middle. Then when we close everything up, we don't have to bother with doing that. So we're gonna go ahead. This is the fuel container that I was talking about. The white one that I just had before, that's oxygen. So later on, we're gonna kind of dip our oxygen tank in there. I can show you how to do that in a second as well. This one's water. So primarily I use this in the early game just to refill my water bottles. You don't need to do it immediately. You have plenty of water bottles to use until you get to the point where you actually need to start refilling them. But it's definitely useful to have it for a little bit later on, before you even start by grabbing ice and crushing it to create your own water. So I'm just going to keep carrying these, and then I'll come back once I'm done with that. Alright, so it is pretty dark out now. We're definitely going to need to use the flashlight, and you'll see I've just kind of piled up everything in here. Now, the next thing I want to do, I'm going to set up my power supply before I start building my walls. That's just going to save me the trouble of having to walk around, because I know my wall's going to run here. I basically want my power supply items to be outside of the wall, and then the actual batteries and power controllers I'm going to build inside the wall. So we just need to search for the, what do we have here? Airlock supplies? No, we don't want to use that just yet. We want this, the electric supplies. Now, I'm going to use two area power controllers. These help you to separate power networks. And in the beginning of the game, I tend to set them up in parallel so that I can kind of use them in lieu of anything else as kind of power storage. Because we don't have like the smaller station battery thing yet. So up until that happens, you just open these up with the crowbar, and you'll see that I aligned the arrows so that I can kind of bring in the power from here and then route it back through here into the base. So I just want a little bit of a battery buffer that allows me to store energy, whether I'm getting that through social or other means, so that I can just balance kind of the ebbs and flows of getting energy versus using it. So we're going to set those up here, and then I need to set up basically the stuff that's going to produce power for us. Now we have a couple of options. The solar panel, we're going to use that later on. That doesn't do a whole lot. The portable generator is quite good, especially initially because, you know, it doesn't produce the most power, I think, but it's a very consistent way to get power in the early game. So I'm just going to kind of set this up here somewhere. I think this ought to be fine. Should I have it closer? No, I think this is all right. So we're just going to put it here. And I need to grab this, so the power generator. Now, any of these things that you mount, you just use the wrench. And this is the same for all of these kind of deployable, portable things. You can just kind of mount them like this. And then this is just an insulated package. So you open it up and you just pop it in here. And there you go. You have a power generator. You can charge batteries in here and we can connect stuff to it. So that's the one that we're going to use. The other one that I want, was that the best place to put it? Yeah, I think it's fine. Okay. The other one that I want is the solid generator. Now this can supply a lot of power and it uses coal. So you do kind of have to go and mine that. Let me just think, what's the best place to set this up? I probably want this to be kind of right outside the base so that this cable can run directly into the base and just have enough space. Yeah, so I can kind of put in the fuel here, switch it on over there, and the power is going to get supplied from here. And then we need to wire all of this up. Now, the way you do this is just take your cable coil. You don't need to have the wire cutters in the other hand, but it is useful because it's going to allow you to splice cables. So meaning that you can kind of splice it into other cables and stuff. So that is just, it's just much easier to build that way. Usually I do all the straight bits first. And then I connect everything else later on. So I think this one, yeah, we're just going to take this straight through here and then put this here. And then this one is also going to come in there. And then I'm going to do all of my corner bits. So put that in there. This goes here. We want to run this into this generator as well. So you'll see what I'm basically doing here is I'm making sure that I'm linking in all of these power sources into my power controllers, which will charge these. And then from there, we can put all of the wires back into our base and everything that needs it. Now, ideally, I don't have this yet. And I don't think there's a power transformer in here. But eventually, I'm probably going to want to put a power transformer here to link to limit the this to 5,000 watts, because that's the maximum that this cable can take. So I don't want the system to ever demand more from the power supply than that. Otherwise, it's going to fry this cable. Eventually, once we make the higher wattage cable, you don't need that. You just use the higher wattage cable to run into all of this, and then you can always use power transformers later down your kind of power supply. But for now, this is going to be perfectly fine. And I think this brings us on to the next step of basically setting up the base and pressurizing it. Well, we don't have to pressurize it yet, but we can kind of get our airlock set up and all of that, and we can deal with the pressurization later. You know, sometimes I would actually advise that we set up simple production first. But whether we do that now or after we've built the base doesn't really matter all that much, because we already have everything inside the base. Let me just make sure. I don't know if we're actually going to lose this capsule once we leave. So we may want to come and grab this extra water and cereal. But even if we didn't have it, it's not going to be the end of the world. So, and by the way, just be careful not to get lost as you walk away from the base. There is a way for us to track coming back, but we'll deal with that later as we talk about mining and stuff like that. So construction supplies, we're going to need this again. Now I'm going to put these tools back. If I right click on them, they'll just snap back into my tool belt. And what do we need? Some iron walls. Now, I'm going to let you in on something else. When you watch most other videos on Stationeers, they're going to show you to put an iron frame on top of and on the sides of your airlock. You do not need to do this. Not sure why everybody's doing this. I think it is a case of that's just what everybody's been doing, and people are kind of following earlier videos. But at least on this planet and on the moon, and probably on Europa as well, I would imagine, the amount of pressure that this can sustain is more than enough, so you don't need iron frames, because the pressure differential is never going to be big enough to blow out these windows that I'm going to put in here. Plus, I can build a solar panel directly on top of this, which is pretty cool, and this saves me some space, and I also just like the look of it better. But, you know, each their own. You don't have to do it this way, but you can just build it the way I'm doing this. This is probably going to be the easiest, simplest way of doing it. So I'm kind of starting by putting in the roof here first. We're just going to fill this in for kind of everything. And then we'll get the sides in as well. Now, again, you'll notice that I'm not going ahead and putting in the panels and the glass and all of that in between. I'm doing it in phases because that reduces the amount of time that you have to switch things, and it just makes it overall more efficient to build. So I just need to make sure that I don't leave any gaps. That's the most important thing, but we do seem to be covering everything in here. Let's just finish up the walls as well. So I'm basically just going to continue doing this and make sure that we have basically these panels everywhere, and I'll come back once I've done that. Alright, so I've just finished this up. You can see that I now have these kind of wall segments put in everywhere. So we're going to put this back into the construction supplies box, and I'm just going to get rid of stuff that I don't need. This medical pole, the road flares. In fact, the road flares, I never really use them. We have a portable solar panel, which is useful, but I don't think we're going to use it right this second. And the rest of the stuff we can keep. Now, we are going to need these iron sheets. And basically what you want to do here, whenever you look at these and there's not a bolt in there, it means that you don't have the iron sheets in yet. So we're just going to go through, and for each of these, you kind of click on the side here or hold down, and we're going to be inserting them. Now, again, this is going to be a little bit tedious for you to watch, so I'm just going to go ahead and complete this and come back when this phase is done as well. So I've completed a lot of them, but I just want to show you real quick how to see what you've missed. So if I look here, I can see there are kind of bolts in there, but I don't have ones here yet. And that's how we can see the ones that I haven't filled up. So we're just going to kind of go through here, look for any ones that I may have missed. If you do this in the right way, if you're kind of meticulous in the way that you work, you shouldn't be missing any, but of course, you know, it does happen. It's good to have a way to kind of identify what you haven't covered yet. But the most important step actually comes now, which is after we've put all of these, because this is not in any way going to be airtight yet, but as soon as we put in the glass, then it will be. Now, where is the glass actually? I'm going to put this, oh, there it is. No, that's iron wall. I was sure that this was within the construction supplies, but maybe not. Let's see, airlock supplies. Okay, we've got a bunch of airlock stuff in here, but I'm not seeing it. Oh, wait, this is the construction supplies. I'm in the electrical supplies there, so I'm putting the wrong stuff in kind of the wrong place. Let's just put this back in this box instead. Okay, so what do we need? We've got iron frames, we've got glass sheets, so we're going to use the glass sheets. And what you'll see is, as I put these in, you can see that it has these little lines. Now, okay, we do have, it's giving us the power low warning. You get that when your suit is at 50%, so you've still got plenty left to go. But you know what, I am just going to swap out the cell here. And actually, since that is not really charging yet, I may as well take advantage of this little portable charger thing. So I'm actually going to grab this battery again. Just pop it in here. It's going to take a long time for this to charge it, but it's fine. We've still got plenty of power. I'm not too worried about this right now. So we'll get back to putting in the glass. Again, I'm just going to go and do this off camera and come back when I've got them all in. Alright, so I am back, and I do think we do have glass in here everywhere. Now the thing is, getting this wrong can be pretty costly, not initially and especially not on Mars, but we do want to make sure that we have everything covered. So I'm just going to put this in my backpack, and I'm going to grab the crowbar. And if you have a panel in, you'll see that this goes yellow to deconstruct, because this is what you use to deconstruct windows. But it is actually a cool way to just quickly run around and make sure I didn't miss any of the panels. And this is in fact airtight, because once I eventually build in my airlock, if I start melting ice in here to basically get oxygen inside, any gap that there is, it's basically just gonna vent out of that gap. But it does look like we got all of them here. So the final piece of this puzzle would be to put in the airlock, but I'm thinking we may want to hold off on doing that a little bit. Well, actually, now that I mention it, it doesn't really matter. We can just go ahead and do the airlock as the final part of this tutorial. And then from there, I'll start talking about how to do production and such. So let's get into the airlock supplies here. This is probably as good a time as any. Now, I do want to say one thing. I did mention that Mars does have kind of dust storms. It's still going to be several in-game days before that is even going to be an issue for us. So I really don't need to do this at this stage. But the other benefit is that eventually when I have to take off my spacesuit to deal with kind of the hygiene problem that you get if you don't do that, it is useful to then have this kind of environment and you can start growing food early. But we are way ahead of schedule here. You can take much, much longer than what I've just done here. So let's have a look here. So the airlock supplies are in here. And probably the first thing that we want to do is install the airlock doors, which I believe should be in this kit. Here we go. We've got the door kit. And we're going to choose... Now, there are different options, and I think to a large extent, depending on how you want to set it up, if you want a manual or an automatic airlock, you can choose which doors you want to use. Personally, I quite like these composite doors, so I am going to use these ones. So I'm just going to make sure that we have the cabling facing inwards to the airlock. It's just easier to set it up this way. So that's what I'm going to go for. And now we need to work out what we need to complete this. I think it's probably going to be steel sheets. So I'm just going to grab some of these and see. Okay, so it's saying that we need a welding torch and one plastic sheet. So usually if you have the wrong construction tool or material, the tooltip will tell you what you need. And so now we have the plastic sheets and we just need the welding torch and we're going to assemble this. So there we go. And then what do we need next? The crowbar and glass sheets. So I can kind of put this away. And we're going to grab the crowbar. And we'll construct this and we'll construct that. And if you want to open these doors for now, you can use the crowbar to kind of manually force them open. So we are going to go ahead and do that. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to kind of set up everything that we need to automate this airlock. You don't need to automate it. You can build all of this manually. And that's something that, you know, I can discuss at a later date. But for now, we're going to do it the easy way, especially for Mars, which is to just automate it. So we're going to need one Activent. We're going to need a console. I'm going to set it up the way that I like to set it up, which is to have the console kind of in the middle here. Then we're going to need, let me just get this glass. Well, actually, I'm going to need this glass fairly soon because I need to grab the airlock sort of control board thing. Just pop that in there, the circuit board. And we're going to just cover that up with glass. So that's all good. Now, the other thing is, once I power that up, we're going to need to program it, and we need the data disk. The data disk basically just puts it into programming mode. It's a generic data disk, and that's kind of what it does. We need one Activent. Now, what Activent means is it basically has a fan in it so that it can, we'll just set that up here so that you can actually either pull air into it or blow air out of it. That's what that allows you to do. What else do we have? We have a sensor. Now we need something that's going to tell it how much air pressure there actually is in here. So you can scroll through the different sensors. We want to use a gas sensor in this case. Just working out where do I actually want to set this up. I think I can actually set it up here. This may be as good a place as any else. So I'm just going to have it here. We'll see if this works out. And what else do we have in here? So we have the labeler. This is actually important. We have the passive vent. So this is just, you know, this is just for air to basically pass through. It doesn't have a fan in it. And what's the other one? Okay, we're going to need some of this piping. And we are going to need the labeler as well. So let me just put this into my backpack for now. I'm going to close this EVA suit. And sorry, let me grab that. Now, the reason why the labeler is important is when you set up this little console, it's important that you know which is the exterior door and the interior door. So you can name it whatever you want as long as that's clear. So I'm going to call this interior airlock, and we'll call this, well, I guess it's short for door, but exterior airlock door, basically. So I think that's fine. We won't need the labeler for a little while. And let's just see if we're missing anything here. So we need to do the piping. We need to wire all of this up, and then it should work. So I'm going to start with the piping. Now, the reason why I put these two so closely together is it's very efficient in terms of the amount of pipes that I'm going to use. So I'm literally just going to have one like this, one like that, and connect these two, and there you go. So that's just going to pull air out of the airlock and well, put it back in, but generally I don't even do that. I just sort of override that airlock cycle to speed things up a little bit. I'm going to put this back in there. So the piping's done. Now we just need to do the wiring. Now our power is going to come from here. Again, I'm using this in my right hand just so that I can splice cables if I need to do it. And we'll have this over here, and then I just need to figure out how I want to do the wiring here. I think if it runs through here and then in from there, this should be good. So it takes a little while to get used to doing wiring in this game because of the interface, but again, the more you play it, the easier this is going to get over time. So basically all of this needs to be connected. There's the power ports on here that you need to have connected, but you also need the data ports because this little airlock card that basically defines how all of this works, it needs that, the circuit board. So let's just splice this in here. Okay, so this is all connected now. And then we just need to connect it to the console and everything else as well. There's simpler ways to wire this up, but honestly, this standard cable is not a particularly precious resource. It's very cheap to manufacture, and I'm not too bothered about wasting a little bit of it and being overly kind of efficient here. I think it just doesn't really matter all that much. So we're going to do that and wire it in here as well. Okay, now this is one of the confusing things, and I don't think currently, at least in this version of the game, there's anything that teaches you exactly how this works. I just want to make sure that I didn't miss anything because I haven't saved or anything. If I do anything wrong here, there's nothing to stop me from things going horribly wrong. I'm going to grab this and put it inside. And we can still use this to charge batteries, I'm sure, because it should still get sunlight inside. But we're gonna kind of pointlessly operate this airlock now because I don't actually have anything to filter in and out. In fact, you know, as I'm saying this, I'm wondering if I should just leave this until a little bit later for one of the other tutorials to show you how to actually get this console functional. Because I don't want to have to cycle the airlock right now until we're a little bit further into it. So I do think I'm going to end this video here. I'm going to come back in the next video and we're going to start talking about production and some other things. But by and large, let's just grab this data disk and pop this in here. When the time comes and we actually need to set up this airlock and activate it and kind of program it, which is literally a 5-second job, we are now set up to do that. So I'm going to end this one here and I'll see you guys for the next video.